we really want to take and do what we can to do our part to help make it so that non-monogamy is not seen as some really oddball type of relationship style. It's seen as a very normal and viable relationship style that the people in mainstream America and around the world, could really take and consider as an option for them to do relationships. So after we started Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, our nonprofit business, and I was kind of looking at, because the LGBT community was, looking or gaining ground on getting gay marriage to be legal in our country. And I kind of wanted to do a little bit of research to find out how, things progressed over the years. And it was rather interesting what I learned. And there were companies all over the United States then that were focusing on gay travel. And there were whole cities, some of the cities were down there in Florida, the Keys, the Key West, Florida, Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, Palm Springs was a big area as well. That these cities really started to target and market for that gay travel. But then, so of course, people think, wow, why don't we take and do the same thing for bisexual travel? And so the travel industry started to this whole process then, and they were marketing and having different sales campaigns to all these different communities. And someone then came along and says, well, wait a minute, I'm just going to go ahead and do something and promote all of these groups, and we're going to call it LGBT. And that way we're not having to just promote one here and one there and one there, but we're going to promote a travel program for all of these groups. And so it was the travel industry that actually coined the term LGBT. And the LGBT communities then liked it so well that they adopted it, and they suddenly came together in a community together that they never had before. And when they came together in that community, then they found that now we have a bigger voice because they were combined in a community. And people then themselves, instead of saying, well, I'm in the gay community, they started saying, well, I'm part of the LGBT community.
That's right.
And so that's how that all took off. And so about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, after starting Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, and I'm doing all this research on the LGBT and what have you, I really felt that we in our community needed something that we could come, an umbrella term that we could come under. And so Kat and I started to brainstorm.
We did.
And so from our brainstorm then, we came up with the ECNM, because we feel that every one of those have a very important meaning and an important place in our lifestyle.
That's right.
And so we're here today then to tell you the meaning and definition of this and why each one of those is so important. And we want to encourage you to help us spread the word about the use of the ECNM acronym. I've gotten it into the acronym dictionary. If you're to look up online to the acronym dictionary and see what ECNM means, it's in there. And but we want to create a lot more community, and it just takes now people starting to adopt it.
One of the things around the communities that are currently out that actually make up what we consider the ECNM community are just like the LGBT community was. It's very fractionated. So there are swingers, and they have their term swinger, and they have their terminology. And then there's polyamorous people. There's people in open relationships. And I've also been seeing a lot of different terminology in different articles I've been reading recently. Some are using ethical non-monogamy. Some are using consensual non-monogamy. Some are using like intentional non-monogamy. There's some different words, and it can be very confusing. So that's one of the things that we wanted to do, was to bring all these different groups, swingers, polyamory, everybody together under one acronym that defines the way that, because it's a spectrum. It's not just one way.
Many shades.
Many shades. We call it many shades of ECNM.
We recognize that within our community that we really we're too fractionated. And so it really weakens us.
It does.
And doesn't give us a strong voice.
No.
And then there's a lot of us people that are non-monogamous, like you and I, that we're not a swinger, and we're not poly. We're kind of a combination of both, and
Right.
and so we really wanted to find something that everybody in our community could come under, and that was really important in identifying what our community is about. And so the first part of ECNM is ethical. There is certainly unethical non-monogamy.
This is true. Even consensual non-monogamy to some degree can be unethical.
That's right. And so if you just take and think of non-monogamy, people who are cheating are practicing non-monogamy. It's just not ethical. And so with where I came from in my religious past, that's one of the things that I realized that right away when I got involved in this lifestyle is that, wait a minute, these are really good, decent, ethical people. They're not the people that I always say in this kind of a community would be a part of. They're not like that at all. And so I think that's where I thought that ethical was really an important factor in what we're doing here.
Yes, for sure. And we have people from every walk of life. We have teachers, we have nurses, we have doctors, we have professors, we have all kinds of people from, all walks of life that practice ECNM lifestyles. And I think that's another thing for people to understand is this really cuts across all sectors of our population.
This has been verified numerous times, and that is it's estimated there are 12 to 15 million people in the United States, not worldwide or anything like that, but just in the United States that are actively practicing ethical and consensual non-monogamy. So that's the second one, is consensual. And so there's 12 to 15 million of us, and there's another 30 to 45 million people that if they weren't so concerned about what is such and such going to think if they ever found out, they would jump in as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people out there that could be part of our community. And just like the LGBT community, where it's estimated there's about 6 to 7 million LGBT people in that community. And so we're twice the size of that community. But when they were all in the closet, it was estimated that there may be 1 million to 2 million people out there that are LGBT in that community.
So many more of us.
Yes, and so that's where it's actually the news media has done these numbers and these estimates and the surveys and what have you to find out that yes, there are 12 to 15 million of us in the United States actively practicing ethical and consensual non-monogamy. And so consensual then, why is the consensual part an important aspect to have as part of our acronym and our community to identify with?
One of the biggest pieces that we talk about in our community is consent and how important consent is across the board for people engaging in what we do. And what consent means is that everyone is on board and knows what's going on. So what happens is we have people that come into wanting to practice this, but maybe it's we'll use a woman. So a woman wants to come in and she wants to practice this, but she's married. She doesn't want to tell her husband she's cheating, but she may engage in this with the people that she's engaging with and never tell them that she's married. So she's not being ethical because she's hiding that part of her life that she's married, and she's not being consensual with her husband because he doesn't know that she's involved in this either.
Now, the other thing that's kind of like that too is that somebody who maybe like us, where sure we know that we're non-monogamous and ethically and consensually, but then how we turn that so it wouldn't be consensually is if one of us were then seeing someone who then was married and their partner did not know about the activities going on.
Exactly.
And so that's then non-consensual because there's another sexual partner in the program that is not really aware of what's going on. Exactly. And that's just not consensual. No. And so to us, and that became an important part of this acronym because we want to make sure that not ethical, but that being consensual, that all parties then know and give consent to the activities that are going on.
Absolutely. Okay? And then there's the consent between the different people involved. So, Mark and I have a certain level of understanding and consent that we've already agreed upon that works for our relationship. Now, in other relationships we have different agreements. And as long as we're holding to those agreements, we're being ethical and consensual with those partners. So another piece could be that I have an agreement with another partner that I end up violating, then I'm not practicing this. So even amongst people that are in this community, there are ways that these could be violated.
Yeah, an example of that is when we first got together, we started having sex and I used a condom, and you had another relationship with another individual and you weren't using a condom there.
Right.
But your agreement with that individual is then that you would be the only person that you would not use a condom with. And so we went a long time before we ever had a condom-free sex.
We did.
And I felt that it was important to honor this other person's position and the agreement that the two of you had. And Kat was really particularly good, I guess, is I mean, you know, in wanting to make sure that that was honored as well. And so then I remember then finally the time came that we just, you know, I think both were in a conversation about it and said, you know, that, you know, it's time for a change to be made. And you were in real solid agreement that it was time to make that change.
Yep.
But
And then it was a matter of discussing and negotiating with that other partner.
That's right.
To move things in a new direction.
So we did not just change it on our own.
We didn't just change it on our own and do our own thing. We brought the other partner in to have that discussion, and everyone then had a consensual agreement as to how we were going to move forward.
That's right. And so these are all part of the important understanding of ethical and consensual, you know, because it's not that we're just out there having a lot of sex with a lot of people without any concern or guidelines of anything that we're doing, you know, and it's an important part. So then, of course, non-monogamy, and this, like I said before, even if you go and you look up some different things like Wikipedia, for instance, will tell you non-monogamy even includes those people who are portraying to be not monogamous with their partner, but they are just secretively being non-monogamous. And so, but non-monogamy, well, what is non-monogamy? That's pretty simple for most of us.
For most of us, however, there are many people in the swinging world who will still identify themselves as being monogamous, even though they have an agreement and they practice having sex with other people. And what we come to realize by having conversations with people in that community is that they feel that their monogamy stems from the emotional attachments and connections that they have with their spouse or their long-term committed partner, and that they have been able to kind of take sex to a different level and say, well, sex is just sex. And it really doesn't mean what it does in traditional monogamy, which is sexual and emotional fidelity. But they've kind of twisted that a little bit to say, well, as long as we're emotionally monogamous, we're going to call ourselves monogamous.
And I think part of that, too, is that, I mean, for a long time, the swingers were the only really people that were even remotely known to be non-monogamous, what we would call. And they just simply, because polyamorous people were so deep in the closet that nobody even knew most of them were out there. And this is going back before internet days in particular. And so, but yet the swingers, you know, because they had their own dating sites and stuff, so people knew that there were swingers out there. They didn't want to have the shame that society was trying to put on swingers as being just awful people. And so they wanted to make sure that the only people who knew that they were swingers was people in the swingers, or they call it the lifestyle community. And everybody else then had no clue. And so they wanted to continue to identify as being monogamous. But that may have been fine for back in the 60s and the 70s, you know, or even the 80s. But here we are now where, I mean, today there's not too many people that don't know about non-monogamous lifestyles. And that's why we call our nonprofit organization Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. And because you can't pick up a major magazine once a month for 6 months in a row without having something come across in that magazine. and
That's
online,
right.
it's all over online as well.
Mhm.
And so non-monogamy has taken much more center stage. In fact, in this decade of the roaring 20s, we're going to see tremendous change. And that's why it's important to be part of a community so that we can come together and understand that we are identifying as being non-monogamous.
Right.
And we're able to create this community that then has a stronger voice than swingers by themselves, than polyamorous people by themselves, or any other shade of open relationships and friends with benefits and BDSM, although some BDSM people are still strictly monogamous.
Right.
You know, and so we want to, though, for those who are practicing non-monogamy, even though they may call themselves monogamous, we want to really make sure that we're creating community and have the strength so that we have a stronger voice together.
Absolutely.
And so that's then what ethical and consensual non-monogamy is all about. And we consider ourselves to have our lifestyle not be any definition of polyamorous or swinging, but we live an ECNM lifestyle.
We do.
And we'd encourage you to adopt that same process in your life, living an ECNM lifestyle, and then share that with your friends and people that you that are again non-monogamous, or even people who that know you're out with. That instead of saying, "Well, I'm a swinger" or "I'm polyamorous" or anything like that, identify with the ECNM so that we're part of a bigger community.